done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
A few moments later.
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently. And she's not very specific in laying that out, and she can't point to a decision she would have made differently, which, in an electorate that thinks that doesn't like the way this administration has led and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
New polls are out, and it doesn't look good for Kamala Harris. I have not been this worried in a long time. So we don't have a lot of time left. We have less than a month left, and she's now losing in almost all the swing states.
Well, Willie, the big headline, this is a national head-to-head poll, is that Vice President Kamala Harris had a 5-point lead in our last poll taken a month ago, right after the debate. That lead has all but evaporated.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about some more cataclysmic news for the Kamala campaign, okay? Because what we're witnessing, guys, is the greatest collapse in political history, okay? I've been telling you guys about this for about a week now, okay? Kamala Harris is collapsing, and the mainstream liberal media has finally caught up, and they are realizing that, hey, this Kamala experiment is not working, right? This woman is basically getting the same result that she got in 2019 when she tried to run for president. And we all remember how that worked out, okay? Kamala Harris, before she got into the race, when she first got into the race, there was a lot of hype behind her. A lot of people thought that she was the front runner in the race, okay? She was a rising star until she opened her mouth. And as soon as she opened her mouth, once she started to talk, okay, once people actually got to know her, she collapsed and folded like origami. Now, if you fast forward to 2024, okay, Kamala Harris, who received no votes in the Democrat primary, is now taking another shot at running for president, and history is repeating itself, okay? At first, there was a whole lot of hype. Oh, Kamala Harris is so great. She's amazing. She's wonderful, according to the media. And now all of a sudden, when Kamala Harris is forced to open her mouth because her basement campaign wasn't working, yeah, things are not going well for her, okay? Her interviews have been an absolute disaster. She has just given the wrong answer to most of the questions. Although the interviews have been softball interviews, and is at the point now where the Kamala campaign is in desperation mode. Okay, they're saying that Kamala Harris is getting help to, quote, clean up her style in interviews after failure to explain how she differs from Joe Biden. Now, I want to talk about this. Before I get into it, I want to play this clip from NBC News talking about their latest poll in which, again, Kamala Harris is collapsing and her trying to change her campaign strategy because her interviews have just been that bad. Take a look.
And for more on our brand new NBC News poll, I am joined now by national political correspondent Steve Kornacki to take us through all of the numbers. Steve, boy, this is a big one.
Yeah, Kristen, the numbers say it. It is a tie game here weeks before the election, and it's that shift. Our last poll taken in the wake of that September debate, Harris had opened up that advantage over Trump. Gone in our new poll. Issues, some characteristics here. These are advantages in red here that you see for Trump now versus September. On the immigration and the border, we asked voters who would be better on this. In September, Trump had a big advantage. It's gotten bigger. On inflation and the cost of living, Trump's advantage now hits double digits. And on the question of who represents change, Harris had the advantage in September. She still does, but lower.
So significant because voters are telling us change is a critical issue for them, not the direction you want to be going in there, Steve.
No, absolutely not. And maybe a reason for that, too, is remember, she's the VP in an unpopular administration. Look, we asked Joe Biden's policies as president. Do you think they're helping or hurting your family? Look at that. Almost 2-to-1 say hurting more than helping. His job approval rating is in the low 40s. And then here's the twist when you ask folks, when Trump was president, were his policies helping or hurting? Look at that difference. 44% say helping, 31% say they hurt. So retrospectively, wow. Trump is getting some numbers here. Talk about issues. This is an interesting way. Typically in the past, we've just given folks a list of issues, said, are they important? Here we've asked a question, is this issue so singularly important that it's the entire basis of your vote for president? And you could see abortion comes in number one there.
And that's so significant. This is the first presidential election after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Hugely significant. Abortion is at the top. Usually we're talking about the cost of living as being the energizing factor.
Absolutely. And I think the Harris folks, if they're looking for good news in this poll, it's this, because this issue is her biggest advantage over Donald Trump. And you could see, as you say, potentially a motivating factor. And one more note here, just got to show this. The gender gap. We always talk about gender gaps in presidential races, but how about this? Trump by 16 among men, Harris 14 among women. That is a 30-point difference between those two. If that happens on Election Day, that's one for the history books. We've never seen it that high.
Yeah, an historic gender gap for sure. All right. On the trail, Vice President Harris has struggled to answer how she would be different than her current boss.
What do you think would be the biggest specific difference between your presidency and a Biden presidency?
Well, we're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Now, NBC News has learned that the vice president's team has been discussing ways she could put more distance between herself and President Biden in the final weeks of the race. Harris is leaning into one key difference, her age, 59. On Saturday, she released a letter from her White House doctor, quote, Vice President Harris remains in excellent health. She possesses the physical and mental resiliency required to successfully execute the duties of the presidency.
So today I released my medical records, as has, I believe, every candidate for president of the United States except Donald Trump in this election cycle. And it's just a further example of his lack of transparency.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, Kamala Harris's team is in panic mode, okay? They are trying to help Kamala Harris clean up her style in interviews because they didn't like the answer that Kamala Harris gave when asked about what is the difference between her and Joe Biden. Now, the reason why is because in these polls, what you're saying is that people feel like Joe Biden's policies are hurting them. So it was a very stupid thing for her to come out and to say that, well, I would not have done anything different than Joe Biden, and also take responsibility for all of the bad policies of the Biden administration, while at the same time claiming that you're running as the changed candidate. It also doesn't help that Kamala Harris does a terrible job at articulating what she's going to do and how she's going to get it done. And because of that, I think that voters are rightfully skeptical, because one of the biggest issues that undecided voters have with Kamala Harris is that they don't trust her. And why should they trust her? She's flip-flopped on almost every position you could think of. The woman was installed as the Democrat Party nominee. She didn't do any interviews for a month and a half. Okay, she was hiding in the basement. Yeah, I mean, she just hasn't been very transparent. She's not somebody that you can trust. And now she comes out, and when she finally starts to do interviews, she says, well, I'm just like Joe Biden, the most unpopular president in recent history. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big, big, big problem. And for whatever reason, her campaign, or maybe Kamala herself, they're so stupid that they didn't realize that, hey, you might want to articulate in a meaningful way how you're different than the guy that you are attached to, right? You are part of the Biden administration. You are the VP. So all of his policies are going to be associated with you. But see, the problem is that Kamala Harris doesn't have enough talent to thread that needle, right? Because she is going to risk pissing off Joe Biden, who is pissed off, and I'm going to talk more about that later today in another video. She would risk pissing off Joe Biden if she actually came out here and said that, well, I didn't have anything to do with the policies, and I don't agree with what Biden did, right? If she actually threw Joe Biden under the bus, that would also create a big problem for the campaign, because then the civil war between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would go public. Okay. I mean, right now it is happening. It's just happening behind closed doors. Again, we're going to talk more about that later in another video, but just understand that Kamala Harris doesn't have the talent to do what they're trying to do right now, right? The problem is that it's already out there. The Trump campaign is already playing the clips. And now that you've said that, when you had multiple opportunities to give a coherent answer that can help voters understand how you're actually the candidate of change, when you fail to do that on multiple occasions, it's going to be really hard for Kamala Harris to come out here and to clean it up. Again, she just doesn't have the talent to thread that needle. She can't do it, right? So it doesn't matter the coaching that she gets behind closed doors. It's not going to work, because she is just not a talented politician. She doesn't have the ability to finesse her way through that question, right? She can't do it. So again, I think it's just so funny to watch the Kamala Harris campaign go into desperation mode to try to clean up the answer to this question, but it's too late. She's already answered the question multiple times, and she's already said that, yes, I am responsible for the worst presidency in recent history. I'm responsible for inflation being out of control, open borders, everything that the American people don't like about the Biden administration. Kamala Harris has admitted that she's responsible for, right? Which has basically destroyed her campaign. Right? You can't take that back. Okay. It's too late to take it back. They should have been prepared for this, considering how they were hiding from the media for a month and a half straight, right? If you're going to hide from the media for a month and a half straight, then you might want to come up with some answers to the questions that you know you're going to get when you eventually have to do interviews. Now, who knows? Maybe they were so arrogant that they thought they wouldn't have to do any interviews, right? Because again, the media wasn't really pressing Kamala Harris like that to do any interviews. Okay. They were just blowing off the media. They say, hey, we don't have to do this. We don't have to talk to you guys until the poll showed that the basement strategy wasn't good enough. It wasn't working. Now that the basement strategy isn't working, now all of a sudden they want to do all these interviews. But clearly, either Kamala Harris is not prepared, or she's just that bad of a politician, right? Which again begs the question, how in the world did she make it this far? How did somebody so mediocre make it this far in politics? She's a heartbeat away from running the country. It's scary to think about. Is the vagina that powerful, right? Is it that much of an advantage for women, right? I don't want to hear nothing about women not being able to make it in the professional setting. Look at Kamala Harris. If she can make it, anybody can make it. I'm so serious, right? She's allegedly black, right? A woman of color, and she still has almost made it to the highest office in the land, when she is clearly extremely mediocre. And that's being generous, because mediocre means average. At her level, the level that she's at, she's below average, right? She may be average for a politician in general, okay? But the level that she's at in politics, she's at the national level. She's at the top of the top, okay? She's among the elite politicians. She's extremely mediocre, but yet, again, she's a heartbeat away from the presidency. Just her in the way that she's ran this campaign, seeing her fall apart in these interviews, clearly she's not prepared. Tim Walz, her VP pick, terrible pick. I think that this is extremely important because it shows you how she would run the country. Her campaign collapsing the way that it is right now is a sneak peek in regards to what would happen to the country if she was elected president. And that's what people have to understand. The fact that she's ill prepared for softball, pre-recorded, scripted interviews shows you that she doesn't have the chops to be commander-in-chief. She doesn't. And that's the most important takeaway that people should have from what is happening to Kamala's campaign right now. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.